Hello, my name is Benjamin Hart. I'm an American attorney and the managing director of Integrity Legal here in Bangkok, Thailand. The producer of these videos, who's standing behind this camera, is currently laughing at me for the title of this video, which I just told him a moment ago. And yeah, we're talking the Lord of War, that's Victor Bout, and this American woman, let me double check her name. I think her name is Brittany Griner, or Grinner. I don't know how to pronounce it correctly. So, and I'm going to call her the Lady of Weed. So let me go ahead and quote this from CBS News, cbsnews.com, quoting directly from the article. Brittany Griner arrives in U.S. following her release by Russia, quoting directly, the WNBA star who was held for months in Russian prisons on drug charges was released Thursday in a one-for-one prisoner swap for notorious international arms dealer Victor Bout, bringing an end to an ordeal that sparked intense high-level negotiations between the Washington and the Moscow to secure her freedom. And I found this via Google News, but it comes from cbsnews.com. So, a couple of things going on here. I guess it's a snarky title, but the Lady of Weed I thought was kind of, because it wasn't drug charges, it was apparently cannabis vaping oil that she was caught with in Russia. This is not a major crime, okay? Let's be clear here. And let me also be clear, I'm not intending to make light of what Mrs. Griner went through. I believe she's married. What Mrs. Griner went through, I'm sure it's been harrowing, and we're certainly glad to have her back in the States. It's great that she's out of custody. Now, on to the Lord of War here, Victor Bout. And I got to be honest with you, I did not make this video. I didn't actually particularly want to make this video. The purpose of this channel is not really just sort of news or entertainment or anything like that. I like to keep it within the bailiwick of Thailand and specifically legal issues arising in Thailand. Well, I really followed the Victor Bout case, and it's really making me feel old right now, going back to how long ago this was occurring, because I want to say we're talking like 2009, something like this, when he was going through fighting extradition to the United States through the Thai court system. I remember blogging, kids, blogging about this frequently, because it was a major story in the Thai press at the time and the English language press here in Thailand on this kind of ongoing saga of Victor Bout. It was really interesting to watch, and then the ultimate sort of conclusion being that he ended up in U.S. custody, which there's a whole lot of opacity that kind of surrounds all that. I'm not going to get into that in this video, but it really is kind of an odd conclusion to Victor Bout's story, that he sort of starts off as the Lord of War, if you've ever seen that film by Nicolas Cage. Then he ends up fighting extradition here in Thailand, only to end up in the United States in custody, only to be traded for a WNBA player who was caught with a pretty minimal, I think by any stretch of the imagination, you could say it's a pretty minimal amount of sort of cannabis oil, I guess it was, that she was using to vape. It seems a little bit of a lopsided. What's that movie? Bridge of Spies, where they do the swap. Francis Gary Powers, who was flying a spy plane over Russia, they trade him for what was his name? Abel. I can't even remember his last name. He was a Russian spy in America, at least allegedly in the movie. I believe he was in real life, whatever. But I can't remember his last name. But this was a trade between I think it was a pretty even swap. If you look at the two people involved, it was a pretty even swap. Now, who knows what's going on behind the scenes in this whole thing? There's a great movie from I think it's the late 80s, early 90s. I think it's like 90 or 91, called Company Business. It's got Gene Hackman in it. And really fascinating movie. It involves a swap similar to this one. Now, a whole lot of things go on that I don't think we're going on here, because the plot of the movie is that the swap breaks down, and antics ensue, and they've got to deal with all of this stuff. But there was an element to it in that movie where there was more than met the eye to the actual swap. Now, again, what's being reported is that this is a, quote, one-for-one prisoner swap, which that may be the case. I have no idea, no insights whatsoever. But, it wouldn't ever shock me if 20 years from now we learn that, oh, there was other things being, this was sort of a, if you will, the tip of the iceberg of an overall bigger trade. There were other things going on sort of under the surface. Wouldn't shock me at all. Wouldn't really shock me to learn it was just a true one-for-one. I know people were pretty upset about, Mrs. Griner being stuck in a Thai jail, in a Russian jail. She wasn't in Thailand at all. As noted in other videos on this channel, cannabis is not on the narcotics list, so this would not have been a problem for her had her WNBA team come through Bangkok. So just FYI on that. But long story short, I'm sure it was, not a pleasant experience there. I'm sure U.S. officials, considered it a high priority to get her back. I don't really know the background. I'm not going to claim to. I just think it's interesting because I have followed Victor Bout for a long time coming from Thailand, and every time I kind of see him in the news, he kind of piques my interest, not out of any other real curiosity or interest than just he was here, and it was a high-profile legal case at the time, and that's sort of what's come up. But man, you talk about a long, strange trip for this guy. Like I said, from being sort of the Lord of War to going through extradition in Thailand to hanging out in a prison cell for, over a decade in the United States, and then now being traded for a WNBA star who was caught with cannabis vaping materials and sent back, they were each sent back to their respective countries. Boy, that's an interesting story to say the least.